Hey guys, it's here bringing you another video, and welcome to yet another dev blog about the jungle. So this was recorded, as you can see, 4 days ago. I had a bit of a busy weekend, got Maya back home, and she's doing great. But yeah, let's talk about the jungle. So I will just say, and before we get into it, I've not read this yet. In the upcoming season, I'm obviously looking to make not dramatical changes here on HuzzyGames, but I'm looking to make the content more educational again, because I do think that's been lacking in the last couple of years. But when it comes to jungle specifically, I actually think I'm going to get back into the jungle a bit. You cannot hide the fact that jungle is such a powerful role for solo queue, and I'm very happy with how our last season went. You know, 142 LP master, mainly playing mid, but you know, support was my secondary role. I think we played roughly 2/3 mid, 1/3 support in that ratio. What I'm potentially looking to do is change that kind of support 1/3 of games to jungle. So whatever Wright is saying here, I actually am very interested in, because I am looking to get back in the jungle. And let me know, by the way, in the comments, firstly, what you think of the changes or stuff that they talk about here. But what champions do you think I should pick up in the jungle? I've obviously got a couple in my mind. Unfortunately, one of my old mains many years ago, Lee Sin, he's not amazing anymore, but he is playable if you're good at him, so we'll see. But anyway, let's get into it. So, hey all, Riot Flocks here. Talk about how the jungle changes introduced in patch 22 have landed. So that's kind of the pets and all that stuff mainly, and kind of, I don't know if they'll talk about it, but obviously the more firm leash areas, obviously, that are now firmly in place. There's not really any overlap you can do, or massively overlap you can do anymore. And you know, some people have said they've dumbed it down a bit, and they have, but it's still a very powerful role. So as of writing this post, it's only been a week since preseason has been live. We've seen a lot of junglers talking about the changes to their role, so we wanted to talk to you about how we think things are going. Keep in mind, this is still preseason, and we're going to continue to make adjustments, but we wanted to open a dialogue because we're playing on this patch, have our own thoughts, and we're listening to yours. So it is worth mentioning, yes, it is preseason. We're less than now a month away from the new season starting. I think they have said when it's starting, but I can't remember. It's either January 4th or 6th or 7th. It's the first week of January, roughly. Riot have mentioned there's only going to be one. There might not even be a major patch from now till then, but obviously they will be kind of keeping an eye. And the season might start with a big patch. That's the thing. And they might make changes of what we're playing now with the data that they're collecting, and they might start with, here's some changes, here's the first patch of Split 1 Season 23, Season 2023, here you go. So before we start, I just want to list our goals for the jungle changes overall. Shift jungle complexity into more rewarding and meaningful areas. Make junglers less reliant on their teammates to succeed in a role, and increase the skill floor of the jungle role to make getting autofilled in the jungle less miserable experience. So that is, I will just say, I will agree that they have done that a bit, because we've all been there when we've had an autofilled jungler and it feels awful, and you're like, well, they have a main jungler, we've got an autofilled jungler, let's guess how this is going to go. With the introduction of dumbing it down a bit, it actually has made it less bad. And you know, there is still a huge difference between a good jungler and a bad jungler, but it's not as bad, because you know, there are people who never play jungle, get autofilled there, and they don't even know what clear to do. Well, the game now for your first clear kind of tells you, and that gets you in a bit of a rhythm. So I do think that's been a good thing. So they're going to talk about areas that they're observing and what we think if plans to address. So counter jungling. Counter jungling should always be in the game. It is a major skill to junglers, because there are many ways you can play jungle. You can play a more basic thing of farming your own jungle and ganking your own lanes. You could be completely farm orientated and not really ganking. You could be very gank orientated and not really farming. And then there's counter jungling. Counter jungling is that kind of risk step up play style that usually only jungle mains will do, and not even just jungle mains, specific jungle champions. Obviously, in the extreme case, Kindred is rewarded for counter jungling because she actively will get her marks in enemy territory. But let's see what they say about this. So the first thing we want to discuss is counter jungling, as it's been a hot topic ever since the changes were announced earlier this year. And while we do think it's a core part of the role and adds depth and skill expression in the forms of pathing, ganking, and general decision making, we also don't think the way it was before preseason was the healthiest version of it. Junglers often pick their champions to round out a team comp for clear speed, comfort, or what's meta at the time, or in my case, to play Shaco. Yeah, this guy's a Shaco main from memory. But more than that, early in the game junglers, just early game junglers, are at absolute mercy of their teams. Oh, no, early in the game, junglers are at the mercy of the teams. True. So even if you pick a champion with decent clear speed, if your mid is shoved, you have no one to help for an invade, which is true. So you have an okay clear time, but the enemy team has a slightly faster clear champion, Nidalee, let's say, in early game, and you're playing Victor, not terrible wave clear, but they have a Yasuo who has that confidence at level 1 to try and shove. You could be coming to your red, and then there's suddenly a Nidalee, and there's suddenly a Yasuo, and where is your Victor? He's under tower trying to clear his farm. It does feel a bit bad, but I also don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because that's all strategy. You know, they're picking Nidalee, who's a very fast early game jungler who wants to invade. You should know that. And if you notice at level 2, when you're moving to your other buff, the Yasuo in mid shoved the wave and then's not mid anymore, alarm bells should start to ring. But obviously, the negative in that playstyle is you might have to just concede the buff, and that also doesn't feel good. You can't fight because you're now in a 2v1, so you can't fight, so you have to concede it. Well, that also puts you behind. So I can see it doesn't feel good, but isn't that part of strategy and building a team? I don't know. So to help prevent the early invades, we made it more time to clear the enemy's jungle early. You can still invade, but it's more important that you either have knowledge of the enemy's location or just willing to take the risk. But this trade-off means the rewards are more impactful than they were in preseason. So if you actually pull it off, it's bigger. With the addition of companions, your smite upgrade is reliant on the number of camps you clear, not how many times you smite. This means if you take a risk and counter early with the increased time it takes to clear the camp, you win bigger than before, as your smite is closer to being more powerful than your opponents, because you're actively taking a camp away from them. That's the idea. The other reason we wanted to move away from very early counter jungling is because it's pretty miserable experience when you're on the receiving end. And I will agree to that. Every laner has the experience of having a lane frozen on them and being forced off the wave. You're down on CS and experience, but when this happens in lane, someone can come help you break the freeze, while that isn't possible in the jungle. Yeah, you're not exactly, as a top laner, going to be like, yo, I'll come help in the jungle and just protect you and we'll get you back on track. That doesn't happen. But again, the opposite does. So like, I'm being frozen out here in top lane. Jungler, just come help me. We don't need to kill him. Just push the minion wave into the tower and it gets the lane to reset. So I can see their rationale behind this. So yeah. Even then, the enemy jungler has timers for all your camps and continue to punish you, unlike a freeze, making the experience uniquely miserable. So while counter jungling is a bit different than it was in preseason, we feel like it still exists in the game, but in a much less frustrating form. All of this said, while we're happy with the direction this is moving, we are keeping a close eye to make sure that jungling still remains places of skill expression. Because again, that has been a complaint of jungle mains, of they are removing skill expression. Like imagine, and I know normally people be like, is Huz feeling okay? He normally doesn't kind of side with mains or one tricks. People like their certain play styles, and I do respect that. And if you're a Shaco main one trick or a Nidalee main one trick, these are two big invading early champions that now are being arguably punished or hurt a bit because that has been their main play style for a long time. They won't feel great as those players. And also, you know, let's say someone's been a Shaco main, which easily could be for 10 years. That's the thing you have to remember. Someone could be a Shaco main for 10 years, having their pretty much the same play style. They now have to adapt that playstyle. Invading has always been basically the same, and now it's a bit different because, again, it's not the fact that, yeah, you can still kill the enemy jungler. You can do that. But the enemy's camps, if you're a jungler and you go into the enemy's territory and you try to kill their camps, they are tankier for you. You do less damage to them. It's taking longer. So it is different. You can't just quickly sneak in, grab their red buff and sneak out anymore. It takes a while. So it is a bit interesting. Clear optimizations. I'm going to level with you here. I play Shaco and I love clear optimization. So I'm sad that it's less of an option than before, but we needed to make a change here. Now, this is, again, part of dumbing it down to let more people experience the role and don't feel as punished if you're getting into the role or you're auto-filled. So before preseason, the clear speed and health for an optimized clear versus a non-optimized clear was honestly pretty insane. Which again, though, I've never felt it's that hard to do. At the end of the day, the camps spawn at certain times, they respawn at the same times, and if you do well, you can get in a very easy rhythm. The problem is some players just never really thought about the rhythm that they can get in. But obviously that is just sometimes the difference between lower and higher rating. It isn't just purely mechanical skill, it's also planning and thinking things through. A lot of the time when people say to me, what's the difference between low and high rating? Yes, there's the obvious things of, oh, I land more skill shots or I make less mistakes. But it's also that I'm doing a lot of planning in my head. I'm not just playing the game on autopilot. I'm actually actively, and I might not be saying it out loud, I'm making a small micro plan each moment in the game and try to pull off that plan. If it's as simple as I'm in mid and I'm going to push this wave, go into the enemy river, see if the scuttle crab's there, or then continue bot lane if it's not. If that doesn't work, I'll go back mid and maybe try top lane next, or I'm just going to push it into the tower, not let the enemy roam. There's these little micro things that you're constantly doing for a reason. Some people don't do that, and I think that's what is partially the problem in the jungle. Is majority of the player base, they don't plan. Even as a jungler, arguably the biggest planning role there is, they don't make a plan. They just play reactively, not proactively. So when we are thinking about these jungle clears, changes, we had to answer the question, how much should we prioritize a player's learned skills and experience over things like role accessibility, champion diversity, and so on? That answer is complicated. Optimizations are good for a role and two major experiences, jungle viability being defined by clear speeds and intuitive optimizations like camp dot dragging. So something like a Lily or something like that. So what Wright is saying here is it's the scale of we have to balance, and it's hard to, skill expression completely in the jungle. High skill floor, but high skill ceiling. That's kind of what jungle has been. What they're trying to do is lower the skill floor so more people can do it, but try to keep the skill ceiling high. And they want still champion diversity, role accessibility, all that stuff. So it's a very hard task. I still personally think Riot hasn't absolutely hit the nail on the head with why jungle is a problem and why it's also not very popular in a lot of places, even though it's the most powerful role in the game for pure climbing. And that's because it's so powerful. If they actually weirdly lessened the power of the jungle and potentially even objectives, I think that would actually have helped jungle more. And arguably with dumbing down the jungle, it weirdly makes it a bit more powerful because it's not as hard to do. But anyway, we still want clear optimizations to exist. We think that they're in a healthy aspect of jungling skill expression, but we want that to be taken out of champ select into a game by putting AoE and single target junglers on a more even playing field by removing the particularly unintuitive optimization of letting camps die to the jungle dot while you walk to your next camp. This is sort of still exists. Yeah, I was gonna say this does still exist. That little Pokemon that you've got following you, I've jungled a few times in preseason, and when there's a little bit of damage left, you start your move early and the pet will finish it off. You just have to time it well and you'll learn that pretty quick. Some of the most dramatic updates this preseason were the leash ranges changes to reduce double camping and make kiting optimizations less important. Directionally, we think these changes are valuable, but the original launch versions overshot our goal and removed too much clear mastery. I agree to that. To correct this, we recently adjusted the leashing ranges to be a bit more lenient. That said, we do expect to continue to examine jungle clearing mastery / rewards and look at where we may have gone too far in the future. So already you can see Riot are kind of toning back that we do need to add a bit more skill expression here. And some people may not think it's a big skill expression of, oh, you can do blue buff on Gromp on one of the side, you know, at the same time, or you can in some cases do red buff and wraiths or raptors at the same time. That is partially skill expression because you gotta learn that. You've got to learn where you have to stand at the right time, and you are, what is the word, optimizing your clear. If you're an AoE jungle wave clear or jungle champion, why won't you do two camps at the same time? And that's what Riot said here is it's the AoE junglers versus the single target junglers. The single target junglers can't do that, but versus a Fiddle that can do it really easy, or a Zac that can do it really easy. There's the thing. And again, there should be, and one of my, I would say, criticisms of Riot in the last few years, to me, they are removing more about what makes champions different. Champions to me are blending into each other because it's not really about the champion anymore. A lot of the time it's about what items you have, not the champion. I like that there's a positive for picking a champion, but there also should be negatives. That's the thing, it's strengths and weaknesses. A lot of modern day champions don't have too many of those weaknesses compared to their counterparts from 5, 6, 7 years ago. And that is part of the changes in the jungle. But what's nice to see is Riot already is kind of going, oh, we did that a bit too much, let's tone it back and give a little bit more of that back. So I think that's a good thing. Pathing, is this the last one? Or we got, yeah, this is the last one. So we also altered pathing a fair bit this season with Scuttle Crab changes, clear speed tweaks, and adjustments to Gromp and Krugs. So yeah, Krugs obviously easier to do now. A larger portion of jungle skill expression is dynamically adjusting your pathing based on the game's state. True. Our goal isn't to change that, but we also don't want pathing to be exclusively decided by your clear speed and crab timings like it has been previously. I will admit, especially crab timings were a massive thing. Does anybody remember that patch that literally there was a mini team fight over the first crab because it gave so much XP, and if your jungler didn't get it, you were a bit screwed. We all remember that. So, yeah. We also don't want it to be defined by which camp is painful to take, Krugs, or which camp will get you back in to full health, Gromp. Krugs are a painful camp to take, agree. They're out of the way and take forever to clear, meaning many junglers just skip them. I definitely did. I remember my jungle episodes, people were like, Huz, you never do Krugs, because they were annoying to do. And I also know each jungler usually has a lane that they prefer ganking. I've never, and it's hilarious because when I play top, I'm like, please give me ganks. But when I play jungle, I don't like ganking top. Bot lane is my favorite lane to gank as a jungler, then mid, then top. So I naturally, a lot of the time, at least obviously if I'm on red side, I don't go to Krugs. But yeah, they're out of the way to over the minute to skip them. As they were, Krugs meaningfully reduced pathing options since most champs could have and should have pretended they do not exist for large portions of the game. Now that they aren't as durable and time-consuming, they're now potential candidates for an interesting or unusual first clear path. Obviously, again, just bring... I have watched him a few times, the boss, the Scion guy. He probably won't be happy with that because obviously he was very well known for taking those Krugs, and that actually was really smart of him, and it didn't really hurt a lot of his junglers. Why? Because people didn't do them. But now that they're more easy to do, there's less durable, less health, more junglers will want to do them, so that might adjust that a bit, but... yeah. Another problematic camp was Gromp and its chunky built-in heal. While satisfying, there were two major issues here. Gromp was solving pathing issues to its ability to heal you up at the end of a clear, and it was providing too much sustain, especially if paired with Smite's heal. This led us to bring overall healing in the jungle down and shift it to areas with more skill expression, kiting, back timings, etc., and tying the heal to the jungle companions and not specific camp. Sustain in the jungle and its influence on pathing is a very sensitive system, and we may have undershot this, but we're looking at ways to improve the system moving forward. I'm fine if they undershoot sustain, like your sustain in the jungle, because again, to me, there's that skill expression of, I'm a bit, I'm on half health, so I could probably gank right now. So do I gank right now, or do I do that camp? But if I do that camp, I'm going to get too low to then gank. I like that. That is skill expression, because you're actively having to make a skill-based decision of, okay, I'm just going to gank and risk it and go for the kill, or I'm going to hold back, I'm just going to go farm, and then I'll base, and then maybe then I'll look for a gank. I like that. That's decision-making part of jungling, where obviously the old system, you did a full clear, you ended with Gromp, that healed you up, you could gank every time. That was the problem, is there wasn't that decision, because you didn't need that decision. You were healing actively in the jungle. So I actually like that the jungle is a bit more punishing when it comes to your health bar, because it makes the jungler have to decide on what they want to prioritize. So that's good. Another problematic camp was Scuttle Crab. Scuttle spawn time meant if your champion couldn't clear and make it a Scuttle by 3:15, they weren't viable. Now that it spawns at 3:30, faster clears can get full recalls or full ganks before crab, while slower clearers can actually get through their camps and time to contest the scuttle. This should open the window for more creative and interesting pathing beyond the typical 6 camp into scuttle clears, which I will say, it is still mainly 6 camp into scuttle, but I think that's fine, especially for the first clear. You just want an okay early game. You don't want to go like, I'm doing 2 camps into a gank, oh, I died, I'm screwed. So still, it will take some time for these changes to fully manifest, and they may end up even being dangerous to the clear meta. However, I don't think the previous meta was a very good one when it came to jungle pathing. Our ultimate goal with these changes is to open a new meta full of options and interesting decisions for junglers. While it's still a bit too early to draw conclusions, jungle pathing remains a deep, strategic part of the role and a part we expect players will constantly be engaging with and in developing. And I think there might be one more. Introducing large changes like this to League is never an easy decision, but it's one we do with the goal of making the game better for all our players, not just the new ones or the top 0.5%. And I will say that is something that I feel like I've matured with, and let me know if you agree, is a lot of the time that I'm coming in with these dev blog videos, and I've not really, if I'm honest, in the past I've never really tried to. Because I always like, how does the game impact the top? You probably have heard me always say that Riot used to develop the game from top down, and that was great. It's good in some aspects. It's good if every player has the aspiration to get in the top 0.5%. But I think I've come to a realization in the last few months that not every player has that aspiration. Vast majority of the players will never get into the top 0.5%. But they also don't potentially want to, and that's okay. In the end of the day, it's just a video game, so making the game better for everybody is a healthy thing to do. So I think that is something that I've personally grown about, and you know, technically I'm in that top 0.5. I think I'm technically in the top 0.2%. But we are the very little number, you know, think of it, top 0. In that number, 0.5, or in my case, 0.2%. You can't make a game for that little amount of players. And the thing is, the higher the rating goes, the more adaptive the players are usually, because that's how they get to high rating. So we'll adapt to the changes that are made. And that doesn't mean that every change is going to be good that Riot makes, or it should always, you know, not take into account high rating play. You know, Riot very much prioritizes their pro play, so they also have to keep that in mind. But still, as for a video game, I'm okay with them making changes for the greater population. The jungle changes are still very new, so we ask you to be patient and collect more data to help us continue to improve these changes over the next few months. Thanks for reading, and I hope to see you in the jungle. So I will just say, what do I think of the jungle? So when the jungle pet thing was announced, I was quite vocal straight away, going, I'm not a massive fan. I'm not like sold on it, because I do think it's a bit gimmicky, but I know why they did it. To fix the sustain, the smite heal, to try and give a little bit more level playing field to single target champions, to AoE champions. It's all of that combined is why we now have jungle pets. The only thing that I will say is, you know, Moss Stomper seems very strong. Obviously, they have already nerfed that. But I do feel, one of my things I will say, and it's kind of an obvious thing to say, the more things that are added to League of Legends, the harder the game is to balance. And obviously we have 160 something champions. We have a lot of items. We have all runes. We're now having another thing of jungle pets. That is another thing to try and balance correctly. It's going to be difficult. That's the thing. It's going to be hard to continuously balance everything in the game the more they add. And it's not just, oh, it's a new champion. This is a new system, so it is kind of hard to keep on top of everything. That's my only biggest criticism, is they are going to have problems getting it right. So we'll obviously see. I will just say, though, I've been enjoying preseason. The state of the game, for me, yeah, it does feel that there's a lot of damage still. I think I'm always going to say that, because I actually think the more damage is the less skill expression, because if you don't have even time to outplay somebody, then there ain't no skill in that. So I wish the damage would come down a bit, a little bit more than what it was. But I actually think, other than that, the game is pretty healthy. Healing is still strong. I wish Grievous Wounds was more impactful, or they just toned down healing. But overall, you know, there's a handful of things that, yes, I think we all probably, and, you know, some people will agree with mine, some people will disagree with mine, But I think we probably all will have at least 2, maybe 3 things that we would like changed, but that's about it. I've had times when I've played League that I would want 10 plus things changed. So to be in a position that I'm like, 2 to 3 things that, yeah, I'd like that change is actually not bad. And I actually think jungle is okay. There are games that my junglers have taken over the games completely, but that's the role. That's always going to be jungle because it's very powerful. They make a lot of the decisions. They are the objective carry. So I expect a jungler to do well. That's why at the beginning of this video I said I want to start jungling more. It's so impactful. So that is going to be it. Let me know what you think of how jungling has gone. And also, as I said in the beginning, if I do start jungling more, what champions do you think I should jump on? I'm going to be beginning... I've actually had this weekend off because obviously, as I said, we got Maya back. I'm going to be doing a recording session tomorrow, and maybe I'll do a jungle session. So this video will be tonight's second video, so I will be able to read the comments before tomorrow's play session. So yeah, let me know. But that's going to be it. If you guys enjoyed, do throw a like on it, throw a comment, throw a subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Call down the reckoning to bring back hope and peace. Restore our glory to live forever. Bring down the dark regime. I know how to unleash eternal peace.